Hey everyone, Phreak here. Patch 10.3 is happening, which is hitting solo queue nowish and hitting pro play in about a week and a half. This is a pretty cool patch. I think all of the nerfs hit champions that need nerfs. Most roles were hit in an important way. Some weren't, but I think we're already fairly healthy, so generally pretty happy with it. All the buffs were champions in very, very bad states that weren't seeing pro play and were really low win rate in basically all cases. So I think it's a pretty good selection of champions, and I'm pretty happy with it. Also, there's follow-up jungle work, which I think is pretty good as well. So let's get into it. We've got buffs to Azir, Corki, Ezreal, Galio, Sejuani, and Yuumi, and nerfs to Akali, Phyllis, Diana, Echo, Leona, Misfortune, Rumble, Senna, Set, and Sona. All right, some new skins, also cool. So let's get into it. Akali has 10 more energy cost on her Q. Her Twilight Shroud stops giving movement speed pretty quickly. It's 10% higher, but it decays, and it doesn't stay up, right? It's just speed on cast, and then R1 can only target enemy champions. These are several very, very large nerfs that obviously mean quite a bit. Theoretically, this can be more movement speed in very specific cases, but in general is certainly a lot weaker. It's going to be a lot harder to use the movement speed to get your Q, auto Q, auto Q, auto trades, and people don't have to be zoned out quite as hard because they can't run away from your stuff and get back in range for stuff quite as easily. So, okay, those are cool stuff. That's great. 10 energy on the Q, obviously pretty meaningful. R1 being targeted on only enemy champions is mostly an escape removal. It is technically more reliable damage. This ability could theoretically be missed. Now it really can't, but that's not going to tend to mean too much. So as we tab back and forth, you're going to see that the brightness on this is a lot brighter than on the patch notes. This will keep going back and forth, so enjoy that. But energy cost upped by 10 is, of course, pretty meaningful. Worth noting that it arguably means more later on. One other thing to point out is I think this is quite meaningful because one of the things that's crucial to Akali is that her Q has a very short cooldown, and her passive refunds energy, which means the lower this cost is, the more infinite you can go in Q, auto, Q, auto, Q, auto, Q, auto, and chase people down. The more this costs, the shorter that loop gets to be because you eventually just can't cast Q again. So this is, in certainly like very spam wave clear senses, pretty hefty, right? Kind of in both cases, you can only ever mash Q twice before you have to wait for energy regardless, but it certainly slows down the third one, right? Your third one's going to be a lot slower in a pure wave clear case. And then beyond that, in PvP combat, and I meant to look up the actual energy you get back from the passive, and I forgot to do that. I'm sorry about that. But ultimately, you're going to get less sort of chain combos off. It's going to be pretty noticed. It's going to be pretty meaningful. So pretty big stuff here. This is going to drop, I'm going to say, several percent off the win rate. Akali was generally a fairly low win rate champion in sort of sub Grandmaster and sub pro. I think these nerfs are big enough that we definitely see Akali's pick rate drop off in pro play. I think they're big enough that she does not need to be banned anymore, but we'll see how long it takes for people to adapt to this. I think these nerfs are big enough that she should be probably 25% pick ban rate in pro. Maybe lower. It's like hard for me to think about this correctly, but my instinct is that this is a really, really huge hit. Next up, Aphelios' Q marks don't have infinite range for the follow-up auto attack. This is a nice little hit. One thing I've noticed is that Aphelios' pro pick rate has gone from like 98% to like 78%. I haven't been tracking the solo Q pick and ban rate very much, but this is another hit. This will definitely remove some, or I guess, well, I should say reduce some frustrations. This is definitely one of the more frustrating and kind of BS bits of power on the champion. Like, it's a good thing to hit. Would not mind seeing more nerfs in the champion. I think he is still too strong. I expect Aphelios to still be the #1 bot laner in 10.3, and expect him to still have a very high pick and ban rate in solo queue as well. So I think more work to be done, but this is at least individually a very good change. Next up is Azir, who is getting a pretty solid 42 extra mana and 20 to 14% more width on the R. Here is the mana pool, goes up to 837, not too bad. I'm going to continually push for, I would like to see champions scale up to 1000 mana. I think getting to sort of the same level 18 point is cool, and just let champions have whatever level 1 mana they want. Do want to point out that Azir has absurdly high level 1 mana, right? He doesn't even double his mana pool at level 18, which is pretty much unheard of. So this is like very, very, very high base meta. It means he can cast a lot of spells in the early laning phase. And to be fair, dude has to mash W to even play League of Legends, so I get it. This is a champion who actually needs to have a mana pool to function at all, almost more than many other mages. So I get he has kind of some extreme mana stuff. That's generally fine with me. I don't think that's bad design or anything. But this is definitely a low win rate solo queue champion. He's not really getting any picks in pro either. And so happy to see some moderate buffs. We'll say that mana buffs tend to influence non-pro more than pro, and ult width is just kind of a cool to see. I have a really hard time gauging how much this really matters. Like once in a while, you'll catch someone you weren't going to catch with your ultimate push, but to me, this is always quite minor, so I don't usually care that much. Really small, we're looking at maybe 1% win rate to Azir. He has room for solo queue to go up like 3%. But, this is fine. Cool to see. Next up is Corki, who is getting a pretty substantially increased AD ratio and AP ratio on this on his passive W, right, on the package W. Want to point out that this ratio is every quarter second. So essentially the full ratio of this ability is actually 20x what it shows. Now, no one sits in all 5 seconds of the package, don't get me wrong, but considering the burn duration is 1.5 seconds, from 1 second, that instead of taking 0.375 times 4, you're taking 0.5 times 6. The minimum burn damage, like, roughly doubled, which is extremely large, right? That if you literally only touched it for a second and flashed, or, an instant and flashed out, the damage it deals to you roughly doubled. I want to point out that the full 5-second long AD ratio on this ability went from 750% to 1000% bonus AD. And you are now, instead of taking only 1/5 of that, you are again taking about 1/7 of that. 2/7 of that? About 1/3 of that. Those are similar, 2/7 and 1/3. Anyway, yeah. This is definitely quite meaningful. This definitely does quite a bit. That's big stuff, honestly, is what I can say. This to me feels really large. This says now slows champions directly hit and knocked aside for 1.5 seconds. I believe this also means they get set on fire. I could definitely be wrong about that, but if this actually means you're doing 3.0 bonus AD ratio to them by hitting them with the W, that's just 300 something damage right there. Yeah, I mean, this feels pretty meaningful. Now, I do want to temper this by saying this is only up every like 6-ish minutes, right? You only get to cast like 4 of these a game, and only 3 of those are going to hit people. But those 3 that hit do like twice as much damage in some cases. So it's a really, 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 really big deal. This looks innocuous, and it's super not. I could see Corki. And the thing is, like, it's so tempered the fact that this cooldown is so long that you don't get a lot of them, but this is super high impact. I would not be terribly surprised if Corki just became the #1 mid laner in pro and like expert level league play, because I think this is actually a huge, gigantic buff. Now, Corki is in a weak state. I want to specify that very clearly, that realistically this champion doesn't do that much damage, or isn't doing that much right now. But this being almost twice as good might make that different. All right, so this is the data table for that. This is if you had 10 bonus AD per level. So like at level 6, you had 60 bonus AD. At level 18, you had 180 bonus AD. The damage per second is only going up by about 25%. This thing has a base damage on it. It's not all that large compared to the AD ratio, but it does matter. It scales up pretty heavily. The damage per second goes up 25%. And if people are sitting inside the entire package, inside special delivery, your damage is indeed only up about 25% at this amount of attack damage. But if you're only getting tagged by a little bit, it's up by 25% times another 1.5, which is more like 1.8x the damage, which is, again, very, very, very meaningful. Yeah, it again, almost doubles the damage output of the thing. Next up is Diana, who loses about 50 mana and loses 6 damage per orb, or sorry, 4 damage per orb on Pale Cascade, which equates to 12 damage overall if you hit all 3 pellets. Here's Diana before and after. Her mana is down 10 to 5%. You compare Azir scaling up to 800, she scaled up to 800 with 375 base mana, right? Actually doubles her mana pool, so did the old one. 420 Blaze It is gone, rip. But yeah, a meaningful mana pool change. This is a champion who often didn't go Luden's Echo. She could go Rod of Ages. Some people just went Protobelt right away. This helps push her towards Roa some more, or even Luden's, but that was a little unlikely. But hey, the W doing 18 to 6% less damage, fairly meaningful. Only 200 base damage in the ability, not all that high. Definitely needs to get multiple casts off to get a lot of damage, but Diana was super duper overperforming. These feel like pretty moderately good nerfs. Also want to point out, Diana is a champion that was not seen in Pro very much compared to its solo queue performances, and in general, I believe that base stats tend to skew to be more important in generic play and less important in pro, right? If it's mana, well, pros are good at playing around mana costs. If it's, attack damage or attack speed or whatever per level, well, pros are better at farming gold, so less of their champion's power is in base stats, right? Like, amount of gold earned per minute directly scales with MMR. XP gain per minute is not nearly as harsh. So in general, right, base stats tend to mean more in lower elos. Things that aren't pro is lower elo than pro. So base stat changes and even base damage changes for the same exact reason, right? The more AP you have, the less your base damage matters. Diana wasn't seen much in pro anyway, doesn't need pro facing nerfs, doesn't need solo queue facing nerfs. I like this kind of stuff. If you're looking for like the literal, like easiest, flattest tuning lever ever for that, it's the base value of things versus the ratio of things. Next up is Echo. The passive, instead of doing 2x to monsters, does 1.5x to monsters. So it does 3/4 the damage that it was going to. Still does everything else, right? The W passive still exists. The Q still exists. The auto attack still exists. But, I mean, this definitely does matter. This definitely does slow down Jungle Echo. And Jungle Echo's been taking over solo queue. So good to see that. He's like a top 3 jungler. Yep. Great, good choice. And we're not seeing Echo in pro play. We don't really care about how much that happened. This is very obviously a specific jungle tuning lever. I'm glad to see a specific jungle tuning lever. That's nice. I think these are kind of like the cleanest jungle tuning levers that exist. I know way back in the day, jungle designers used to use armor for jungle tuning levers, and then eventually they realized that, like, look, every jungler clears a jungle at high health. Who cares? Just let it happen. And so they just use damage tuning instead. They use clear speed tuning, which I think is great. So slightly weaker Echo jungle. He'll lose maybe 1% jungle win rate. Next up is Ezreal, who's gaining 4 mana growth and some attack speed growth. Ezreal, the champion that is very, very weak in solo queue, even with optimal keystone choices, still far sub 50% win rate. Certainly Kleptomancy was helping buoy him back in the day, but in general, Ezreal has been a low solo queue win rate champion for a very, very long time, despite being big in pro, even back in the Klepto days when people were running Klepto on him and it was doing stuff. Ezreal just was underperforming. He's been picked like 3 or 4 total times across all competitive leagues all year. When there have been like 200 Akali bans, there have been 4 Ezreal picks. Right, so like this champion is not in pro play, so there's room to buff him. I am a little concerned about Ezreal really showing up in pro, because keep in mind, we're seeing Aphelios nerfs, we're seeing Senna nerfs, and we're seeing Misfortune nerfs. So there's 3 champions going down and Ezreal going up. I don't think we're going to see the Ezreal meta with buffs like this. These are not that big. And again, I think this is a champion who needs solo queue power more than anything else. I think attack speed growth is a great spot for that. Because just auto-attacking people as Ezreal is going to happen a lot more in solo queue, like these long, drawn-out team fights compared to pro. So I think these are the right kinds of buffs. And let's get into this. Let's get into what happens with Ezreal. So his mana pool is actually gigantic, right? Here's Diana, who goes up to 800. Here's Ezreal with the exact same starting mana of 375, and he goes up to 1225. He gains 425 more mana than her. And again, I would like to see these flattened. It's like just to do it realistically. But for example, right, this is a champion who gained about 140 mana, right? He got 140 bonus mana by getting 8 mana per level times 17 level ups. This is a difference of 3 attack damage at level 18 with Muramana. 3. So like the differences here are not massive, right? You're getting 2% of the difference. It's not that big of a deal. It's not really a tuning lever in the sense that, like, if Ezreal gained 0.2 attack damage per level, would anyone really care? Like, it wouldn't do very much. It's like almost a rounding error, right? Like, it's not that big of a deal when this champion with just Muramana had 180 anyway. He goes with 182. It's like, okay, this obviously isn't like a direct damage tuning lever, because it's not. You would do more than this if you really wanted to change his damage output. This is before buying Triforce, before buying a Ruin King, before buying Scimitar, things like that. Like, again, it's not really a meaningful change in damage output. Like, technically exists, yes, but like, again, not that big of a deal. But again, it does allow Ezreal to have more mana for just being able to cast his spells and do a good job. Again, mana pools are better for non-pros than pros. The other thing it does, and this is not mathed out here, but it's more important than this, is Muramana itself deals percent of current mana as bonus damage on hit, which is actually probably the bigger, like, you know, when you have 140 more mana, it's bigger than 3 AD, right? It's even more damage on hit than that, and that's going to be relevant. Like, your mana pool is just simply 100 points higher, so you just simply do, you know, whatever the percent is in more damage, like every attack. And that does add up. This will add up to quite a bit of win rate. I'm going to probably guess 1.5 to maybe 2.5 to maybe even 3% win rate. 3% seems too high. I don't think these buffs are enough for 3% win rate, but there's probably a good 2% win rate here. And that's quite good. Ezreal should still be sub 50 in solo queue. Again, there is a chance Ezreal starts showing up in pro quite a bit. He'll show up some. I don't think he'll be number 1 because the affiliate nerfs are too small, but we probably see him a bit more. Next up, Galio does a bit more damage with his Q. I am assuming that this is the same DPS. It just does DPS for longer, for an extra half second. They're, again, trying to aim it at sub-pro Galio being better because sub-pros don't get out of Q in time. I'm not certain about that. I feel like pros are good at landing the CC chains on Galio. And getting, you know, a little bit of that AoE to wave clear and guaranteeing the whole Q lands. I'm not sure, right? Like, there's a logical explanation for either case of, well, bad players don't get out of the tornado, but good players CC you, so you take the tornado damage the whole time. I can see that going on either side of the argument. I don't know which one's more correct. My instinct says this means more for high skill than low skill, but maybe I'm wrong about that. Maybe it's like it means a lot for pro and iron, and it's like worse in plat. I'm not certain on this. I really don't completely know. But, oh yeah, sorry. We also have the Ezreal attack speed buff that we'll math out. And here it is. It's 14% more attacks per second at level 18. But really more like 10% more attacks per second at level 18 with his passive on. Which is, again, pretty meaningful, right? This is 10% more auto attack DPS before Trinity Force. Yeah, that's good, right? This is a meaningful amount of extra damage. Like I said, it's why I'm leading to like maybe a good 2% or so win rate. Because, yeah, that's pretty solid. All right, so as we mentioned, Galio, right? So this is Galio. I forget what I put in as his example target. I might have put it in his own base stats, but hey, if this really is the tornado does 1/3 more damage, how much more damage is the ability actually doing? And it's 10 to 13%. I forget if the AP ratio is pushed more towards the tornado than the base damage, but regardless, this is a meaningful amount of damage increase with primary damage tool. It's 10% more damage pretty much all in. Because keep in mind, right, the ratio is also increased by the same amount. Now, that is only if they stay in the tornado, right? If people jump out of the tornado, there is literally no difference at all in the damage output. That is worth noting. That is a very relevant point to keep in mind here. It is not always 10% more damage. But I'm going to go ahead and say that, yeah, a decent portion of his Qs are going to hit the whole tornado, and that's a really good damage bump. This is probably a good 1.5% winner on Galio. I don't remember where he is exactly balance-wise, but assuming they did this because he has room for a buff, and yeah, this seems pretty good. Next up is Leona, getting 0 to 20 damage off the ability she maxes first, and a flat 10 damage off the ability she maxes second. Now keep in mind, Daylight is still a thing. That's going to deal damage, so here is the W damage before and after, with Daylight being counted, and it's 5, 10, 15, 20 damage off the ability. With after Daylight is, 7% off, 5% off in a lot of cases. That's pretty meaningful. Here's the E with a flat 10 damage off. It's 12 to eventually 3%. Again, 10 damage is only 10 damage. And we put them in together, and this is the 10 to eventually 30 damage off of her kit. This is before the Q, this is before the R, this is before auto attacks, but we typically math things in just sort of the direct ways that make the most sense. I want to point out that just W and E does 700 damage at level 18 with Sunlight. Now, also want to point out that Leona does not hit level 18 ever. She probably stops at 13, right when the last hits come in. But that's still, she's providing 650 damage to the team. But, hey, 30 less damage, definitely meaningful. Good stuff there. I mean, it's 30 damage. 30 damage is super relevant. Again, to point out that, yeah, she's going to learn E really early on, so that 10 damage is going to happen really quickly. You only get 15 damage off when you get to level 4, right? Q, W, E, W at 4. Okay, now it's 15 damage less, and then from 4 towards 9, it goes very quickly towards 30 damage. So it's in super duper early all-ins, first 3 levels, not that huge of a difference. And then like throughout laning phase is where the most of the nerfs happen. And then the nerfs soften over time because the scaling didn't get any worse here, and suddenly didn't get any worse either. So it is a laning phase bullying nerf to this champion. Level 6 all-ins have 20 less damage in them. Pretty meaningful. Misfortune loses 0.75% attack speed growth. Here's the math. It works out to 8% attack speed before W and 5% less attack speed after W. This certainly matters a little bit. The core Misfortune builds right now are doing a bunch of raw attack damage items like Essence Reaver into Infinity Edge, and kind of relying on base stats and her W for attack speed. I want to re-echo the point that I made on the LCS, which is maxing W first is actually her highest win rate build. It's remained true for the last month or so. That even though Q is nice, turns out that just getting pure auto attacks is even better when you're buying a bunch of raw AD and crit chance. Just hitting people in the face is really, really good. So is the movement speed for getting back to lane. So I, once again, recommend W max first on Misfortune. But end of the day, you know, her overall auto attack DPS is getting a lot worse. 2.25% is relatively low attack speed growth overall. It's not all that high. She's stopping at 0.9, which is reasonably low for a marksman, especially with a 0.656 base attack speed, which is quite high as well. This is not a lot of attack speed overall. This is, of course, compensated by the W active. And, you know, she's back in a reasonable spot. But yeah, I mean, you're going to feel this. You're going to feel this definitely. And so they're nerfing her a bit more for solo queue than for pro. Again, anything with base stats just in general is always going to hit solo queue more than pro. I think that's to me true. But happy to see this nerf. Misfortune definitely overperforming. My go-to bot laner when I want to gain elo. I think she's definitely overpowered, does deserve the nerf, absolutely seeing that, and is absolutely number 3 AD carry in pro play. And if we didn't nerf her as well, she would have taken over with the fellows and Senna nerf. So I think it's a good nerf. Could go stronger, but they don't have to. MF is typically a champion who got to sit at above 50% win rate and wasn't a problem. This is a champion that people were generally okay with sitting at 52, but she's at like 54. Next up is Rumble. Rounding the armor, rounding the attack damage. Glad to see it happen. The numbers here don't matter, so I won't do it. But it's losing 5% movement speed and 20-0 shielding on the W. Now, you're always going to max W, last. That's going to remain true the whole time. Let's drop the decimal point because we don't care. Yeah, 4% less move speed with the W on. You're going to feel that a little bit. Keep in mind stability, you definitely max last. You max Q then E every single time. 20 points in the shield you're going to feel for a long time. Now, it does have an AP ratio. It's still going to always be 20 less, but it's not always going to be 25% less at all times. But this will definitely mean Rumble gets poked out of lane a whole lot more, especially, I would say, especially in ranged matchups where you need to spam this a lot and you're going to get like that full value off of a Syndra Q like every time. You're really going to feel this. This is going to drop his mid lane win rate quite a lot. In a lot of the ranged matchups, the melee matchups up top, you're going to feel the movement speed a little bit more, you know, chasing down the Renekton or whatever, or running away from stuff. This is pretty meaningful. This is a good 2%, maybe not quite 2%. It's close. I kind of want to say 2% win rate. 5 move speed and 20 shield is pretty big. So this nerfs Rumble a lot. He is roughly the best mid laner in the game. I think he definitely deserves to be nerfed as the best mid laner in the game. These nerfs are reasonably big. I'm happy with them. This should drop Rumble from being the number 1 mid laner in pro play, but will still remain well over 50% win rate in solo queue and viable in pro as well. Sejuani gets 10% attack speed at level 1, but her passive falls off against regular non-epic monsters. So she will take some more damage in the jungle. She'll be a little bit squishier. Maybe when you run into her, you know, off of a gank, or if you invade her, you can do some stuff there, and she's not slow immune, so Olaf can like fight her and stuff. It's going to fall off constantly. I forget how long it takes for it to re-equip, but it means it might never be on for jungle clears if you're going for like really flash clears. If you're doing like red to blue, it's probably back, but if you're doing like red to raptors, it's not. So you're going to kind of feel this, but the 10% attack speed is quite nice. It's obviously 10% attack speed at level 1. Solid 6% attack speed at max rank. I want to point out, by the way, that Sejuani had more attack speed growth than Misfortune, right? 0.997. And Misfortune has a higher base attack speed. Sejuani gets a lot of attack speed growth. Sejuani is zippy. which, she kind of uses. I actually really like, by the way, is another thing I like. I would love to see more champions just like try to reach 1 attack per second at level 18. Just that's how much attack speed growth you get. Just whatever your base attack is, whatever, YOLO, no one cares. It goes to this though. You target ending at one attack per second. That's another like, hey, wouldn't it be nice if things were smooth? I think that's just like a cool thing. I don't know. It's me just like, look at this clean number of 1, but I think there's actually some value there that it's not really worth this video for, but would like to see at some point down the line. Exceptions like Senna notwithstanding. So Senna, Senna. She is definitely too good as the farming bot laner and definitely not quite good enough / she's fine as a support. But in solo queue, her pick rate is all about playing bot lane farm, and in pro play, her pick rate is all about being the bot lane carry as well. So, okay, and the winner supports it, by the way, as well. It's not like people are like trolling themselves and playing the champion in the wrong spot, like with Kiana. She's actually just a better AD carry than she's a support. So, basically, the big thing is that cannon minions no longer have a guaranteed soul drop rate. That's number one. That's the biggest thing. Cannons are no longer guaranteed soul drop rate. And based on the math, that regular minions are a 1.67% drop rate. That's really, really low. Cannons were the primary way you got souls as AD carry Senna. I mean, that and missing CS, which, let's be fair, we all do some. Support Senna, from 20% to 25% on minions, Senna doesn't kill. Now, again, for people playing solo queue who only get maybe 6 or 7 CS per minute, well, you're going to see more souls from the shots you don't take as well. But assuming perfect play, every 5 minutes, and this is, by the way, counting the math where cannon minions spawn more frequently after 15 minutes and then more frequently after 25 minutes. You can see like the rate of growth accelerates really rapidly, right? First 15 is 11 souls, then we go to 11 souls per 5 minutes as it goes from here. So this was your soul rate if you were literally perfect CS and stayed in lane for all time. I know that's not really realistic. I know that's not completely fair, but that is what it would have been. And we compare that rate of soul generation to what support Senna would have gotten by AFKing through the entire lane, never getting last hits. And so in the real world, where you missed some CS, you were somewhere between these numbers, right? In 25 minutes, you were somewhere between 23, or I guess we'll say 24, and 60. Somewhere between 24 and 60 based on how well you last hit. Okay, now, if you're perfect CS, you lose like 3/4 of all the souls you would have gotten. Because it turns out most of the souls you got were from cannon minions. But as a support, you're getting 25% more from all these souls you're picking up by not last hitting. So support Senna is directly a lot better, and perfect CS Senna is directly a whole lot worse. So perfect CS Senna loses again, we'll go at 20 minutes, loses 14 souls, and support Senna gained 12. But this is assuming that you are last hitting essentially 50% if you're going to average this, but you're not last hitting 50%, you're last hitting 3/4. Roughly, right? On average for us playing solo, you're lasting about 3/4, meaning you're only getting 1/4 of this plus 12, aka 3, and you're losing 3/4 of this loss, aka 3/4 of minus 12, which is 9. So you are definitely weaker than before as farming Senna, and you are definitely stronger than before as support Senna. And I'm really glad that we have very obvious direct tuning levers that specifically talk about whether or not you last hit. I love when kits have levers like these, right? Earlier we saw the Echo passive on monsters. It is a lever you just say more or less damage to monsters. How good is the jungle? Here is a lever that is how good are you at farming versus not farming. Absolutely love it. Great stuff here. Also worth pointing out, this doesn't really matter anymore. But if you are playing AD carry Senna and you're Rakan or Thresh or Nautilus last hits a cannon minion, it counts as though you killed it, thus giving you 1.67%, not the 25%. So you can't get around it with having a tank support, right? It's equal. You got the last hit, essentially. So I like these changes. I think it's good. I think this definitely helps close the gap. I think AD carry Senna, So I think support Senna is definitively just stronger. I think there's no way around that. That is just absolutely true. And support Senna seemed to be fine. She was basically, I think, about 50% win rate champion. I could be wrong about that, but I think that was true. I don't think AD carry Senna loses 3% win rate off these changes. I don't think it's big enough for that. I mean, there's a chance it is. If you really do lose 20 souls, that's 25 range and 25 AD. Like, maybe that is really enough. And that could be true. And I'm really underestimating how big these nerfs are. My instincts tell me it's not that big and that she will still be slightly stronger as AD carry than support, but the pick rate will go from here to here. And that's all that really matters, is that like you feel empowered to play the role you want to play in solo queue, so I think that's going to do really good stuff for the player base at large, and it will definitely drop her in pro priority. I mean, absolutely the case. So I love that change. Set is broken. Set is the most powerful champion of the game and needs nerfs that are bigger than these. Base health regen goes down by 1.25. All right, so here you go. Here's Set's old health regen and new health regen. You already had some of the highest base health regen of the game. It's down 14 to 6%. Set also gains free health regen that it's not a multiplier on what his base HP 5 is. It's simply flat health per second based on his current health. Now this is the maximum available value, right? This is the maximum available health per minute if he's at 5% HP, right? The brink of death. Now that is not a realistic case to be in at all times, but we're somewhere between here and here in the real game. And if we're over here in the real game, the nerf is, between 4 and 1% instead of, 14 and 6%. So the nerf is very quickly not felt if he's very, very low. Do want to point out, by the way, that every 5% missing health in the first 5 levels is exactly the amount of health regen as he lost here. It then doubles at 6, and then doubles again at 11, and then doubles again at 16. So, it's very quickly, twice, and then quadruple, and then 8 times this difference. But that is the amount. Is every 5% missing health is exactly this. So essentially, another way of putting this is they nerfed his passive by 5% missing health. Like literally, instead of this patch note where they say this, if they said Set's missing health regen now only starts at 10% missing, it would have been the exact same patch note. If it said it starts at 10% missing instead of 5% missing. Tell me which one sounds like a bigger nerf, because they're literally identical. Yeah, it's not that big of a nerf, is it? No, it's not. It's really not. Oh well. But this is the bigger nerf. This one actually does matter. The W cooldown is increased by 2 to 4 seconds. And you max his ability first, so you're going to feel this nerf really early on, really quickly. 50% increased cooldown on your primary damage tool. And it's not only your primary damage tool, it's your primary tank tool, right? This is how you turn your grit into a shield. This is going to be felt. This is definitely going to matter. All the builds that pros were using were rushing 30% CDR, right? They're rushing Black Cleaver. They're getting a Kindle Gem to go towards Spirit Visage, things like that. Like, they are trying to get this cooldown as low as possible, as fast as possible, because you can W at the start of the fight, build grit, and W again, and then if the fight goes a really long time, you can W a third time, because casting W is a health gain mechanic, right? Casting W is not only your height, is your primary damage tool, it's also your primary durability mechanic. So this is a huge deal. Cooldown on W, I typically don't care that much about cooldown changes on damage abilities. This is super duper massive. Most of his trading patterns can no longer start with W at the beginning of the fight and then end with W at the end of the fight. That's no longer really possible here. This is a really, really, really big deal. A really, really, really big deal. This matters an absolutely lot. The actual damage, at least the base damage of the ability, going down by 0 to 20. Sure, of course, that gets unwound fairly quickly, but by the other places his damage comes from. But this cooldown change is the single most important change here. This will matter. This will be felt. He will still be above 50% win rate, and he will still be probably a top 4 champion in pro, especially with a Kali going down and with Ophelia slightly going down and Senna going down and MF going down. Set, I think, should still be the prime top laner. And he's probably still going to be a pretty good jungler as well, although you will definitely feel his cooldown change in the jungle on top of that. Senna loses 5% move speed on the E. That's a good choice. And we go on to Yuumi. And there's one thing I'm not certain about with Yuumi, but I'm pretty sure is accurate. So the Qs6 ranks, basically what happened is after the most recent changes where they completely gutted Q, People stopped maxing Q, they simply maxed E, and they just heal bots, which was like not gameplay at all. You could play this champion at 80% power with a foot pedal. Not really great gameplay. So they're trying to shake it back up. They're trying to say, okay, you know what? You can go ahead and max Q now. In fact, you should probably max Q because it costs more at level 1 anyway. So put the points in and make it useful. The damage goes down by 5 technically, but eventually goes down by 55 technically. But the big caveat is that it does 2 to 8% of the target's current health as bonus damage. So let's try to math this out. Let's say you are going to max it first after all. If you're going to max it first after all, and I picked a champion that was like more or less Aurelia. I picked like 580 base health with like 95-ish health per level and said, yeah, this is a poke skill. It's probably hitting at full HP in most cases. In those cases, it keeps up if you're maxing it first. In fact, at level 1, it's quite a lot better. It troughs a little bit in the mid game. As you're getting some rank ups here, right? Like, the rank ups are better than the passive health damage growth, but like, yeah, it turns out you are still getting a lot of value, and hey, it scales up to 382 base damage. That's a pretty respectable base damage. I mean, that's higher than old Yumi Q, and the AP ratio is not so absurd that she's gonna hard AP carry. It also means you don't have to like spam AP. You don't have to go Death Cap or Luden Zeko on Yumi to be useful. It's only 0.4 AP. It's not that bad. We can just build support items, and the Q is useful because this part is where 220 base damage. That's like half the damage coming from that. And a real tank has even more damage, and it's literally half the damage coming from that. And that doesn't scale off AP ratio. It scales off people applying health. So, okay, yeah, this feels workable. This is definitely an ability worth putting points into. I'm assuming that this is scaling with rank. Maybe it's character level. If it's character level, then you don't really need the 25 damage rank up, and you can just simply sit on, this. But let's assume you actually do max it. Yeah, you're getting some pretty meaningful damage upgrades here. This is pretty good. And then the heal gets worse. So, okay, well, let's compare. What if we kept the... and the cost goes like this, right? So, right, if you max it first, indeed, you save 20 mana by level 11. You get the bargain by level 5. It's at least equal by level 3. Not too bad. This is pretty usable. Okay, I'm about it. It's a real champion. Sounds good. Great. But the E, right? The E gets worse. It's got a bigger AP ratio, but the base healing is down. And also, instead of having 5 ranks, it has 6. I didn't think the ability used to have 6 ranks. I could be trolling myself. I haven't actually played Yumi in forever. So they added a 6th rank and didn't tell us where it came from, is what I'm gathering from this. I'm sure someone else knows more than I do, and there's going to be someone in the YouTube comments that I will upvote and like pin the comment because that. But here's her healing before and after. Assuming you did indeed max it first, and you can now get it to level 11. Yeah, still a lot weaker, right? Same spell level 1, by the way. So if you are going to max E second, you can wait until, level 8 to get your next point, and it's the same ability. That's not bad at all, right? That's not terrible, really. That's pretty usable. And it scales up to being close-ish. It's within 40. That's pretty bad, but maybe you can overcome this. So, okay, if you max it second, yeah, it's, again, equal for the first 7 levels. And then it's, yeah, definitely weaker, but maybe we get there. Okay. So what's really happening? Well, level 1, ability's better, right? Has a higher AP ratio. 0.3 became 0.4. So, okay, it's a strictly better ability at level 1. That's pretty good. But for each rank onwards, right? Rank 2, rank 3, rank 4, rank 5. Yeah, you're going to need way more AP than you have to make this ability as good. Rank 5, yeah, like, if you max it first, you're clearly losing a lot. And then, okay, max rank of the ability, like the new rank 6 compared to the old rank 5. Yeah, it still takes you 400 AP to make up the 40 healing. Good luck with that. Realistically, good luck finding that much AP in any reasonable build on Yumi. It's not going to happen. So, the healing is pretty definitively weaker. The damage is pretty definitively better. And the game rewards you maxing Q first. So, Emax is weaker, Qmax is better. And I don't think we see her played in pro. I don't think she's really that good in solo queue yet. But we'll probably see some follow-up work. And, eventually we'll get to a spot where Yumi is a balanceable champion. I think we're getting there. Especially with this kind of stuff where, the major change got added a while ago, where she can be rooted and can't reattach, so you can actually kill this thing. But hey, silence no longer screws you, which is probably a good thing. All right. Next major change, and the final major change, is a jungle update. So to recap, in the 2020 preseason, they made jungle camps respawn faster and made them worth less XP. However, they are worth the same amount of gold. So if you only care about gold per minute, your gold generation has gone up because there are more camps to kill and they're worth the same amount of money. Of course, they were worth less XP in most cases, and that made it so that junglers felt really bad. Well, they're doing a further update to jungle XP. If you didn't know already, jungle items give 10 flat XP on large monster kill. That is going up, or sorry, they give 50 flat XP. They now give 60 flat XP, right? So they give 10 more flat XP on monster kill. However, to keep the first sort of wave of jungle clear a little bit kinder, which, by the way, if you spell out, is children in German. Don't know why I brought that up, but Kinder. I use German words sometimes. Don't know why. I do know why. I know some German. That's the reason. What a compelling story. All right, so I'm, by the way, assuming, I don't know for certain, that these are additive on the first camp. If they're not additive on the first camp, then I goofed, but I don't think I did. Either way, you lose 15 XP in the first camp, but you get 10 more XP on each camp heading into it, so you're going to get to the same spot really quickly eventually. One other thing they're doing is trying to ruin Monster Hunter. They're trying to ruin Funnel. Basically, instead of being removed on item completion, aka getting to your jungle enchant, it's removed at 14 minutes. That is a much longer time for Funnel. Also, instead of losing 10 gold per lane minion, it's 13 gold per lane minion. That's also very big. They are really, really trying to ruin Funnel. What's also nice is that the if statement is no longer a jungle enchant, it's simply time. So you can go back to playing like Machete Shaco and just rushing Tiamat or whatever you wanted to do. I mean, Rengar does similar things as well. And not have to feel bad in the mid game that you're just going to get randomly minion taxed. So that's good. I think this is yet again a better if statement than before. Every time I've seen these notes, I'm always like, hey, I would love to find a better, less janky rule around Funnel, but Funnel is here for a while. Taric is like a 62% win rate mid laner because of Funnel Duo. Master Yi's win rate is elevated because of Funnel Duo. And the more they can kill Funnel, the better everyone is at League of Legends, or the happier everyone is playing League of Legends. So I'm happy to see further tuning on trying to kill Funnel. Let's do it. All right. So Funnel going away a little bit. That's good. More XP per monster. That's more XP, right? We're closing the gap. That's good. Okay, small XP change on red and blue, which, by the way, means very little in late game because you're giving every blue away anyway to your mid laner. And so you're only really getting red, which is 5 XP less every 5 minutes. Very, very small XP per minute difference. Next change. In the mid game, camps are worth about 5% more experience. The data table here, by the way, is at level 1, camps are worth 100% XP. Level 4 camps, as determined by the average level of champions in the game when the camp spawns, instead of being worth 2.5%, are worth 7.5% more XP. Level 5 to 6 camps, instead of being worth 10% more, are worth 50% more XP. And level 7, which is where scaling stops, are both still just worth 25% more XP. So the mid-game jungle clearing has been worth more XP, in addition to Monster Hunter giving 10 more XP. And finally, Krugs are different. Krugs are worth 15 more XP and 10 more gold. However, that gold has been moved into the small Krugs. So very significantly on gold, moderately on experience. So let's talk about jungle clears. Well, your first clear looks like this. This is the part you kind of really care about. It's definitively better than the last patch, right? It is definitively better in the last patch, or than the last patch, by a pretty meaningful amount. In sum total, it's 4% more XP, right? Here's your comparison. Bam, there you go. And obviously 10 flat XP is worth a lot when they're not worth very much, and 25 flat XP is worth a whole lot when they're really big. And here you go, right? These are your numbers. It's 50 more experience. The world rejoices. 5, 10, 20, 30, 40. I didn't add these numbers correct. This is 65. Don't worry about it. This is more than you think. However, we can compare the old jungle, right? Let's compare the old jungle from 2019. What's different about the old jungle compared to 2019? Well, actually, it's not that. Sorry. This 15 XP, I didn't do the math wrong. That comes from this right here. Even though that this is a 25 XP over the top, we have to resubtract the 15, and so we're still in the same spot. All right, so we're still at, right? 10, 10, 10, 10, 5, 5 is 50. All right, the math holds up. Don't worry about it. We're going to move on. But again, your overall jungle, right? Each camp is worth more, but then we lose 15 XP on the first monster tax, and there we are. But again, the part we care about is comparing it back to the last year. Your first jungle clear literally has more XP in it. Now, of course, there is a small caveat in that you would have had to full clear your Krugs, but I don't know of any junglers that don't full clear Krugs in their first clear. You pretty much just do like red to full Krugs to the rest of the jungle because you just clear the rest of the Krugs. Like you just do that, right? So the first clears actually got more total XP in it. So the first round junglers are going to feel better. All right, then we go into level 4, where in 2019, I want to point out that Krugs had a first time clear penalty, where the first time you cleared the big Krug, it was worth less XP to make the first time you cleared your jungle fair and to, you know, balance that stuff. That penalty, of course, went away in the second and third and fourth and fifth and so on spawns of the camp. So from 2019 and earlier, Krugs were worth a crap ton of XP. And I mean, look at this, right? Like, there is a reason literally every jungler always took Krugs every time, because, I mean, it's literally worth twice as much, right? And that meant that if you were on the blue team, you took Krugs and were near your duo lane, and if you were on the red team, your jungler took Krugs and was near the top lane. It's why red team played around top side and blue team played around bottom side in pro play, because your jungler's already always there because it's worth twice as much XP, and it takes twice as much time to kill, so it's a match made in heaven, and you already got counter pick for your top laner by last picking on red side. It very quickly became this vicious cycle of, well, of course we do this. This is where all the optimal gameplay is. That has been flattened somewhat. Now, I say flattened somewhat. It got a little bit more stretched out here in 10.3, where it's worth, 40 more XP than Gromp. But, it takes more than 20% longer to kill. So, yeah, it's if you have the time, go spend it killing Krugs. But if you don't have the time, maybe consider not doing it. Well, we look at, again, level 4 camps in raw experience after, doing all the math. And it's 7% better than the last patch. And it's 2% weaker on a full clear than 2019. Krugs are still substantially weaker, but Gromp is still way better, and red and blue are still way better. And it's worth pointing out that, blue is only kind of better this time around. And actually, I feel like, with the 5% XP gain bump, it bumps these things above in most cases. Even though this camp went down by 5 experience, the 5% XP gain makes up for that, and it's still worth more than the previous year. I'm pretty sure my math is accurate in this stuff. I know sometimes I get stuff wrong. I'm pretty sure this is right. But yeah, you're down, 24 XP in a full clear, 24 experience. It's not a big hit. And hey, you know what? And if you're doing fast clears, if you're clearing, as much on cooldown as you can, hey, Gromp is 50% more XP per minute than last year. 50. Gromp is 50% more XP per minute on that camp. Freaking path to this thing. Even Krugs, when you account for the 5% bonus and the 10 flat extra XP on camp, and the fact that Krugs are also worth, 15 more XP on the camp as well. There we go. It's green. Every single camp is worth more XP per minute than last year. Now, that's not always completely fair, right? The camps still take a flat amount of time to kill. You still need to go and do things like gank. You cannot just turbo farm at all times always, but even the most nerfed camp gets close when you count respawn time. So if you are able to camp Krugs and camp Gromp, there is theoretically kind of sort of 18% more XP in the jungle if you can hard clear, which I know, again, is not completely realistic. Even if you only clear once through, it's 24 experience. And if you ever get to clear a camp that wouldn't have been cleared, you make up the XP difference. Now, the one final thing I will say is if you were doing the first half of Krugs then leaving, then you got weaker, and that math is going to be later on in this video. Then we go into the level 5 or 6 spot, which is still a flat 5% XP gain. We can again make this green because that's an accurate statement. And again, definitively better than last patch, of course. Pretty similar situation for which camps are better than last year as well. Still about a 2% difference. And again, our XP difference is 29 in this case, or sorry, 31. So we went from a 24 XP difference to a 31 XP difference for a level 6 jungle clear. Again, not that hard. This is, about 6 or 7 minutes into the game is when this is happening. This is your, second or third or maybe fourth, probably not your fourth clear. But, a little bit later into the game, your third-ish clear. Again, 30-something XP difference. It's not gigantic. Do want to point out that the extra 10 XP from the jungle item, that also works on Scuttle Crab. It also works on Dragon. So if you're getting those things, if you're getting Rift Herald, that makes up for this XP difference, right? If you're getting the neutral objectives, you're actually factually not down XP. If you're getting jungle monsters or neutral monsters at all, you are not down XP compared to last year's jungle. You're not. Straight up, you are not until you get your ultimate. There is essentially nothing weaker about you. And again, I want to point out, XP per minute is there for you. Caveat with the Krugs thing, where you can't just hit the first one and leave. We'll talk about that in a little bit, but realistically, it is fraudulent to consider the early jungle weaker than last year. At this point, it just isn't true anymore. The math just doesn't actually support it. Sure, beforehand, yeah, you're losing more than 100 XP per clear at 4 and 112 XP or 115 XP at level 5. Yeah, that's really, really meaningful, right? 100 XP on this clear, 100 XP on this clear. You're even down 35 XP on your first clear. Yeah, I buy it, right? 100 XP per clear is pretty meaningful, and you tried to make up for it with clear speed. That wasn't always possible. You're off by 25 now. That's very negligible. You literally leech one melee minion, and that's the difference. And again, the camps respawn faster, so just do those. Then we get into the late game, right? You get to level 7, you get to the late game jungle, that's when things are different, right? That's when the percent XP bonus is no longer higher in this patch, and so your differences aren't quite as good, right? Your Krugs are 25% weaker, your Raptors are 8% weaker, your Wolves are 8% weaker. You still got the better Gromp, you've still got a slightly better red and blue buff, which again, you're mostly handing over to your teammates, right? You're only 4% higher, 4 period XP up on them. Your actual clear is 6% less experience. Here you are, you're getting 100 less XP per clear at level 7, which is better than 150 or 140 less XP per clear at level 7, but still relevant, meaningful, matters. It absolutely does, absolutely meaningful, don't get me wrong. And that's where, yeah, you know what? Now you're into late game jungle. Now monsters aren't gaining health anymore, right? They have stopped scaling their durability. For the most part, I think there's a couple things that still scale, but they're pretty much done getting more durable. But you are getting faster, and this is where I think, the changes would have been successful. Is okay. We're in the late game now, where you can evaporate jungle camps, right? You've got your first enchant done, you've got your Tiamat done, you've got Cinderhulk or whatever, you've got level 4 skills. You're flinging a lot of damage out here. You've got some CDR, all that stuff. That's when your champion actually gets some pretty fast clear speed. That's when this change would have actually been fine, because you evaporate the jungle so fast, you actually run out of things to do in some cases if you're a fast farmer. This is where I can actually sort of faithfully support these changes and say, okay, I think this is actually probably power neutral. Every time I talk about this before, I'm always saying look, theoretically you can make this up, but I think they're still weaker. This is where I think it's actually pretty legitimate, where it's yeah, these camps are a little bit weaker, but we can make up the XP with clear speed. And I think this is actually reasonably fair to think about that. The XP per minute is up by 50. That feels doable to me at this point. And again, we keep the asterisk of, hey, but by the way, what about Krugs? How much did that math change? And we can look at it in a couple different ways. So here's XP old versus new, and it was 160 and it became 175. We could have added the 50 and 60 on top, but it's not really that important. We don't really care. Ultimately, whatever, right? It's not that important. This was the distribution, and actually, I think this is actually an easy way of looking at it. Okay, so Krug's percentage XP. And the one thing I'm missing here, and I'm actually screwing this up, is we should actually change this from 55 to 105 and from 37 to 97. That's actually the more fair sentiment here, right? Because that's what these things are actually worth. So let's just do that real quick. Oh, this is actually gold. Wait, okay, actually, let me not do that. Cool. So there's the XP change in a more actually fair situation. Okay, so here we are. All right, here's the table we actually care about. Okay, the large shrug was worth 105, plus 45 for all the mediums, plus 60 for all the smalls. Right, double checking. It was worth 55 XP, plus 50 for the item. Now it's 37 plus 60 for the item, which means in mathematical differences, it went down slightly, but went up slightly and went up slightly. So instead of being 2/3 of the camp value, it's only slightly more than half. And look at, oh yeah, this math is now awkward, isn't it? This adds up to more than 100%. We're trolling a little bit. Oh boy. What did we do? Oh yeah, we need to add a sum. Hold on. All right, we're doing live math. Let's go. There we go. Bam, bam. Okay. Whew. Crisis averted. Wow, that was almost terrible. Now we're okay. All right. So instead of half the camp being in the large monster, it's only 40% of the camp. Now, again, it's only a difference of 8 experience. As we're talking about XP here, you make up 9 right there, and you make up 24 here. Now, one thing I want to point out, by the way, is to make the camp despawn, you had to kill 1 large and 1 medium, meaning you go down 8 XP and you go up 3, because there's normally 3 total medium krugs. You go down 8 and you go up 3. So if you just swoop in and kill just enough to make the camp despawn, aka your Ivern, you're down 6 experience. That's not terrible, but again, if you want to spend the time to hard farm, there is 24 XP in killing the babies, right? You look at the actual factor of like how much of the experience is in this camp, and yeah, the median went from 21 to 23, and this one went from 29 to 36%. More than a third of the camp is in the babies. And obviously, you always have to kill this to get this part. So yeah, you really, really, really care about finishing off the camp. It really shoved the rewards over, and I dig that. We look at it as far as a factor of gold, and notice how kind of similar the numbers were, right? It was half, a quarter-ish, and I mean now it's more like a third, and almost half, right? Again, pretty increasingly so, and actually more so with gold. It really got pushed toward the small krugs, towards the babies, towards finishing out the entire camp. In terms of gold value, this hurts Ivern actually a lot more, right? You lose 13 gold and gain 3 back. Ivern gets 10 less gold from a Krug camp and 6 less XP from the Krug camp. I mean, that you're going to kind of feel that, right? But at the end of the day, this is the breakdown, right? And this is the little asterisk where it's like, hey, you might be a little bit weaker in the cases where you're just doing the big pieces and leaving. If you spend the time, though, it's 15 XP and 10 gold. Just added to the camp. It gets pretty close to the old stuff. And I got to, again, reiterate and point out yet again that in the 2020 jungle changes, gold earned was not modified. It was only XP. So there definitively is more gold in the jungle. XP is flat for the entire early game. And then in the mid to late game, the flat XP is slightly down, which I think you can reasonably compensate now that you're a level 7 jungler or level 8 jungler about there with clear speed and catch back up. There is more gold available to you, so a jungler can farm more items. That is undeniable and is close to as good in XP. And in the end game, that's when XP starts getting taxed, and you got to get through your jungle to do it. But again, there is 500 XP per minute, which is actually, by the way, pretty close to what you get from a lane. Laning is about 600 XP per minute in a solo lane. It goes up a bit over time as cannons spawn more often. But at level 7 camps, we're not at, increased cannon wave spawning yet, not for another, 7 minutes into the game. So if you can power farm and leech any XP at all from the lanes, you have the same XP per minute as a laner. Clear speed notwithstanding, there are some other relevant points there. Don't get me wrong. There are factors. A turbo farm jungler does not get the same XP per minute and cannot get the same XP per minute as a dedicated solo laner who doesn't drop XP. But laners have to fight enemy champions and drop CS and get forced to recall and that kind of stuff, and junglers get the luxury of not always having to interact. We're going a little bit off topic into the theoretics of, hey, what could this mean, long term, and what's the better role? I'm not trying to really go there and try to, force anything on you, but hey, those are things that to consider. All right, we are just under an hour into the video. TLDR patch 10.3. Akali is getting really heavily nerfed on her Q. This mostly, I think, affects her ability to continually Q, auto, Q, auto, Q, auto, and get the constant energy resets and the empowered auto attacks. This is going to be, the R is also forcibly targeted on an enemy champion. Those are the single biggest changes to the two biggest changes to Akali this patch. Is the two of the three, they're the two big ones. This definitely has a big impact here. It's going to absolutely destroy her solo Q winner, which is already very bad, and this probably drops her to like a 25% pro presence. Affiliate's no longer global on the sniper. Mark auto attacks, good change. He'll still be big in pro. Azir gets some mana and some soldiers on the R. That's nice, has a lot of room to grow. Will still be sub 50 solo Q. Probably won't see him much in pro. Corki passive change is really, really good. If you're only getting glancing blows, this roughly doubles the damage of the ability. If you're sitting in the entire thing the whole time anyway, you're getting about 1/4 more damage. Pretty meaningful, should mean a lot. Some mana off Diana, some flat damage off Diana's W. Still be above 50% win rate, but good changes. Echo is a 1 to 2% weaker jungler. That's good as well. As you're going to get about 2% win rate in solo Q from attack speed and mana growth. That's going to be really, really nice. I'm expecting to see some Ezreal in pro play as a result, especially with the other top 3 marksmen all being nerfed. Probably going to see quite a bit of Ezreal this patch. Galio gets more damage on his Q overall. It equates to about 10% more total damage if they stand in the entire tornado. If you're landing a CC chain, you're getting the whole tornado. If they're walking out of it, you're getting no buffs here at all. I think this is pretty meaningful. 10% more damage than a primary damage tool is quite a lot. It scales with enemy health. It scales with AP because it's a duration thing. This could be quite good. Leona does overall 10 to 30 less damage in all-ins. That's pretty meaningful. She'll still be a big champ in pro play, though. Misfortune gains 0.75% less attack speed per level, more or less. You will feel this a little bit. Ends up being about 5% attack speed with her W on in the endgame scenarios. You'll feel it a little bit. She'll drop a percent or so in win rate, but still very strong, still worth playing, and should still be in pro. Rumble loses 5% move speed on the shield and 20 flat health in the shield for the vast majority of the game. You max this last. This will do a lot. He will stay above 50% win rate as a mid laner and will maybe drop 1 peg in pro play. Sejuani gets 10% attack speed at level 1, but her passive armor drops off against regular monster camps. I don't know how important this is going to be, but probably a little bit. This is going to be really meaningful for clear speed, though, because keep in mind that she can continually use her E on monsters. So auto, E, smack, auto, right? Like, she's going to get that more often. This is a very direct DPS increase. It's going to bring her up quite a lot in the jungle, and she could use the help. Her win rate's quite low. Senna is getting a lot less souls in the AD carry position and a lot more souls in the support position. About 25% more souls from support and about half as many souls from the AD carry spot. That's before you count harass souls and kill souls and stuff like that. But from monsters, it's going to be pretty meaningful. This will close the gap somewhat in her AD carry versus support position. I think we go from here to here, and she's probably still slightly better in the farm role. But still cool to see. Set is super duper overpowered and loses a little bit of health regen. I want to point out that this health regen difference is the same as how much health regen he gains by losing 5% of his max HP for the first 5 levels. And then it's less than that from level 6 onwards. This is very, very small. This doesn't mean very much. However, this nerf of 2 to 4 seconds on W is a really, 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 really big deal. You pretty much cannot start a fight with W anymore on set and reliably get a second W out before you drop low. That's going to certainly be meaningful. We're going to really notice something here. The 20 base damage as well is also pretty meaningful. You do max W first, so you're going to feel this pretty quickly on. This is a good nerf. This is going to be meaningful, but Set is still overpowered. 5% move speed selfishly off Sona is going to drop her power level somewhat. She will remain above 50% win rate, though. Good champion. Yumi now has a reason to max Q first because her Q does percent current health damage. This ends up being about a 10 to 20% damage bump in most cases. And the mana cost not going up with rank really might bait Yumi into maxing Q here. I don't mean bait as a negative thing here. I think it would probably be the correct choice. Overall, yeah, this is going to be pretty meaningful and will certainly make Q max first Yumi gain quite a bit of win rate. If you don't max E, the ability is strictly better. because rank 1 is the same flat healing with a higher AP ratio, so 1.1 to Yuumi E is strictly stronger than before. If you max it, though, you need eventually 400 AP to make up this 40 shield or healing difference. That's going to take a long time to buy, if ever, so Yuumi is definitively worse at healing, definitively better at dealing damage, and overall about as powerful as a champion, but you might have to change the skill order. Yeah, probably. Jungle Monsters, the TLDR is that your first clear has more XP in it overall, and with this Krug change, more gold in it, actually. Your mid-game clears between levels basically 2 and 6 have about the same amount of XP per clear in them, but again, the camps respawn fast. You can start those clears earlier on and go after the camps you care about, and again, there is more gold in the Krug camp. Finally, once you get into late game, past level 7, those changes are part of why this works this way, is there is definitely less XP in the jungle per clear in late game clears, but the jungle respawns faster, and that's where you've got to make up the time. Your early to mid game is as good or better, and your late game, you need to use the respawn timers to keep up an XP, but the amount of XP you can gain from your jungle is actually pretty close to what solo laners get if they never recall or never die. And this is before you gank and tax lanes and get some free gold and XP there as well. This, I think, overall puts junglers in a pretty good spot where they can be quite powerful. One final thing to note is that gold and XP value of Krugs has been shifted towards the small pieces a little bit. Keep in mind that this 10 flat XP gain from large monsters feeds back into this, so it's really 105 becomes 97, not 55 becomes 37. The numbers are not as stark as you might have expected. Ultimately, though, it does shift the rewards towards killing the small ones. So if you were going to be there and stick around and power farm, you're definitely going to get some power out of that. And again, there is more total XP in the jungle. If you can power clear, there is more total gold in the jungle, even if you're clearing at the same speed as 2019. But if you clear faster, you are indeed more powerful. At this point, I can say in good faith, jungling is definitively not nerfed in the early game, and it's weaker in the late game if you don't keep your camps down. I think that's fine. I think requiring junglers to have a lane assignment is correct. And I also like playing things like Shyvana and Karthus, so I'm very happy to just keep doing that. That's it for the patch. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.